Hey folks, Zach Osterman, how you Insider, Indianapolis Star. This will probably be the last of the IU Tour Diaries here on the YouTube channel. We'll probably do something. I'll try to do something when I get home, maybe wrapping a little bit more of this up. But obviously here, one last time at the Coliseo Guillermo Angulo, the Casa de los Gigantes de Carolina, the home of the Carolina Giants, who have won a ton of Puerto Rican championships, it should be said. I think I'm counting something like 15 or 16, maybe 18 up in the rafters here. Someone apparently described Gigantes as the Boston Celtics of the Puerto Rican League. So that gives you an idea of some of the history of this place. The first championship goes all the way back to 1977. First of all, I wanted to start this by saying thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing. The YouTube channel, in terms of traffic, in terms of subscriptions, in terms of engagement, has just blown up this week. I hope that these videos have been informative. I hope you've enjoyed them. I hope you've enjoyed all of our coverage at indystar.com/sports. Believe me, this isn't going anywhere. Obviously, there won't be Tour Diaries much longer, but we will continue to kind of expand the sort of offerings here on the YouTube channel as we get into football season. Mike Nizilik and I obviously need to do some checkups, some check-ins perhaps when I get back to Bloomington, because he's seen a lot more of IU football practice now than I have. But first of all, please remember to like and subscribe, and thank you all for joining us. To get to the game, Indiana, far and away the most dramatic of the three games here. Indiana wins 81-80. Hoosiers were down 50-30 at halftime. I thought you saw Mega really adjust very well from game one to game two, particularly, number one, the way that they were defending some of Indiana's ball screen actions. Reed Bailey had a very quiet game for a lot of the afternoon. And number two, most importantly, the way that they were kind of isolating and removing Tucker DeVries and Lamar Wilkerson from the offense. They were making DeVries really struggled for touches, and when he got the ball, they were making him move away from the basket. They were making him sort of move into areas he didn't want to. They were helping so that when he would kind of come around screens, and dribble handoffs and things like that, he was really struggling to find space. Indiana wasn't knocking. It's worth saying some of it, too, was just Indiana got some open threes in that first half off of that extra attention that Mega was paying those two guys, and just didn't knock them down, and that happens. But one way or the other, Indiana was really struggling. I don't think it's unfair to say, some of the defense was an issue. I think, again, if you're Darren DeVries, you'll probably point out some defensive issues, some defensive deficiencies, but I think it's also probably fair to look at some of what happened on defense in these two games against Mega, particularly in the first halves, as a reflection of an offense that just wasn't getting moving, an offense that just was not circulating the ball, generating points in terms of, like they were playing the style of basketball Darren DeVries wanted, but either because the shots weren't going down or because the ball was just kind of sticking in the wrong place, not getting to the right place. Indiana was really struggling, and that was leading to easy runouts. That was leading to too many transition baskets, too many fouls. I think Indiana, struggled in both of these games, frankly, with the way the game was being officiated. Some differences in international rules. I keep coming back to, some of the screening that was going on in these two games just would flatly not be allowed in college basketball. And I'm not picking one side or the other and saying who's right about that, but I would describe some of it as perhaps more akin to pass blocking at times, two hands into the chest. But second half, Indiana really adjusted. I think, in particular, the way that it was getting Wilkerson the ball, that got him going. He made 3 free throws pretty quickly into the second half, and you feel like that just kind of got him his shooting rhythm. And then he knocked down, I think, back-to-back threes, just generally, found his way into the offense a lot more. And once he shook loose, a lot else shook loose. I think it's a reminder that, we've come away from this trip sort of with the affirmation of understanding that Lamar Wilkerson and Tucker DeVries are this team's best players. They're Indiana's sort of best way home, so to speak, offensively. But also a reminder that when you get a player like that going, it just opens up a lot for others. Sam Alexis started getting more productive touches in the post. Trent Sisley hit a 3. Alexa Ristich had a couple of big baskets. I thought Josiah Miles, I don't have a box yet, but I thought Josiah Miles had probably his best game of the week here, just in terms of his energy, his activity, finding space, exploiting space, playing well defensively. I thought he brought a lot of really good energy off the bench. And then DeVries did get going in the second half. He didn't hit a three, I don't believe, but he did have, he got to the free throw line a whole lot more. Just kind of got more generally involved in the offense. He's one of those players, he's not a point guard, but he's one of those players that he's going to touch the ball a lot. Offensively, defensively, he's going to get a lot of rebounds. He's going to be in the action a lot because he understands where the action's going to be because he's been in this offense for so long, and he knows where to go kind of, try and find ways to get involved and ways to impact the game at both ends of the floor. Also a special sort of nod, not special nod, but a nod to Tatum Connerway, who I don't believe scored in the second half, but he had 18 in the first. Like, I think half of those were at the free throw line, which was indicative of Mega's inability to defend him individually and his ability to break down defenders, get a step, get in the lane, get fouled. But in the same breath, I think also indicative too, especially because as he kind of doesn't score in the second half because the offense drifts away from him, of the fact that he had to go individual in the first half. He had to be sort of more individualistic in looking for his offense in the first half because everything else was kind of breaking down, and he just sort of had a lot of end-of-clock situations or second-chance situations where you just sort of felt like he was just trying to sort of manufacture something because the offense as a whole wasn't producing what he knew Indiana was looking for. But I will say 18 points in 30 minutes or 20 minutes, that keeps Indiana in this game. And Indiana probably doesn't come back and win this game, given that Mega played a lot better defensively in both halves than it did for about the last two and a half quarters and change in the Saturday game. Indiana probably doesn't win this game if Connerway doesn't at least have Indiana. I don't say at least down 20, but the deficit would have been a lot worse if Connerway hadn't been able to just sort of generate his own offense in some moments when Indiana just needed baskets to stop the bleeding, to just kind of find its feet. Of course, DeVries, I think, will, he said post-game, he said there will be lessons for us in how we got down in both of these games. He's clearly not sort of only pulling the positives from this. He's going to remind his team that you can't be down 20 points. You can't struggle through these sort of listless starts. Of course, a setting like this is also going to be more conducive to comebacks like these because Indiana was down 23 on Saturday. They were down 20. I think 20 was the worst the deficit ever got today. It is worth saying too, and DeVries would probably remind his team this, these settings are going to be a little bit more conducive to these kinds of comebacks. Number one, because they're exhibitions where there's not a lot of pressure on, and number two, because when you're playing on FIBA rules, you're playing with a 24-second shot clock, which means that the game is just going to go a lot quicker. The pace of the game is going to be a lot faster, and that's going to allow you to score more points in a shorter amount of time. So, you think about Saturday, for example, where Indiana scores, I think, 82 points in 30 minutes, something like that, something in that range. You're not going to be able to do that in college. Obviously, it should go without saying, but you're not going to be able to do that just by the structure of the game because the shot clock is longer, possessions are longer, the game just moves slower, and you don't have as many opportunities to score. And so 80 points in 30 minutes. And more generally, the way that Indiana was able, the extra sort of rope Indiana had to tie together these comebacks to go ahead and just follow that terrible metaphor through to its conclusion. Those aren't always going to be there in college games, and so Indiana's got to be able to start better, start faster. I wouldn't even necessarily say they started particularly well against Central Universidad de Bayamón here on Wednesday night, but it wasn't noticeable because the athletic level was so dramatically different. But you can say all of that, and in the same breath also say it's impressive that Indiana came back. It's impressive how Indiana was able to pull together. On Saturday night, there was kind of a almost like sort of a feeling of inevitability once Indiana really geared up and started playing better at both ends of the floor. It just sort of Mega just looked like it kind of couldn't resist what Indiana was trying to do, how good Indiana was, how deep Indiana was. I think depth is quietly something that has come out of this trip, not just in terms of depth of scoring, but depth of options, depth of energy, depth of lineups. Different kinds, different varieties of sort of combinations that DeVries is going to be able to throw at opponents. I think Mega just got overwhelmed by that on Saturday. This was a different kind of comeback. Indiana had to play all 40 minutes to win this game. They don't seal it until the Wilkerson to Reed Bailey baseline drive and dunk possession comes inside the last 8 seconds of the game. So, and then Mega has one last chance to try and win the game with about 7 seconds left. So, you get the sense there. I mean, it's a different kind. Indiana was not inevitable in this game the way that it became, just the way its momentum started rolling up on Saturday night. So Indiana had to win this game differently. And in some ways, they've had to win all three of these games differently. And I think if you're Darren DeVries, you will certainly not be ignorant to where your team still needs to improve, what your team struggled with out here. But also, I think you will be appreciative of the fact that each of these games was a bit of a different animal for Indiana, a bit of a different challenge. The Bayamon game really wasn't much of a challenge at all, but the other two games in particular, they were different kinds of challenges that Indiana had to navigate together. So Hoosiers are already gone. They're long gone. As I think I said at the top of the video, I think they might be going back to their hotel for a quick shower, and then they're headed home. They will be home tonight. They'll fly direct, if I'm not mistaken, San Juan to Bloomington. Needless to say, there are not commercial flights from San Juan to Bloomington, but we'll be up and flying with the sun first thing in the morning to get back to Bloomington. I'll be back at football practice later this week. Mike Neislick at heraldtimesonline.com and indystar.com/sports has kept you abreast of everything that's been happening with Curt Cignetti's team across these last several days. And one more time from me, thank you all so much, everyone who has watched these videos, who's read our content at indystar.com/sports, who's engaged, whether it's on social media, whether it's in here, whether it's in some other medium. Realistically, without you, without our readers, without our viewers, without our subscribers, both at the YouTube channel and at the newspaper, we wouldn't be able to do things like this. And I know a lot of people have been really interested to see how this tour went for Darren DeVries. There's a lot of understandable interest in this, his first team and how it's shaping up and how much it's changed, and what that means and what it will look like. And we've really tried to take you behind the scenes as much as humanly possible. But we wouldn't be able to do that without, all of the support that you give us. So thank you so much, genuinely, for just all of that, whether it's reading what we write, watching our videos, whatever it might be. We wouldn't be here without you. So thank you one more time. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll have a lot more content heading into football season. Again, this will probably be the last dispatch from here in Puerto Rico, but it's been a lot of fun. I hope you've all enjoyed it. And for the Indianapolis Star, I'm Zach Osterman. We'll talk to you soon.